right, we'll give it a few minutes while everyone starts to join in, but welcome. Today we have an awesome panel discussion, Navigating Tax Season with the Perfect Toolkit. We have a great lineup of speakers, as you can see here. Before we get started, of course, I'll go over a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to hand the reins over to Molly at Xero, but we are recording this, so we will be sending out the recording to all that register and or attend the webinar today. We do have a few poll questions that we'll be launching throughout, so please make sure if you need CPE that you answer those poll questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will get to those towards the end and leave some time for that. And I think that's it for housekeeping. I'm going to launch one poll before we get started. I think, here we go. Do you have a tax season plan? Hopefully everyone says yes to this. As tax season is quickly approaching, unfortunately, maybe for you, but I know it's very busy for everybody during tax season, even me, unfortunately. But
it tells me I can't vote.
No, panelists can't vote. Sorry. Well, everyone said yes. So yay, kudos to you for having a plan. That's awesome.
So we don't even need this webinar then.
Apparently.
Guess not.
All right, well, I'll hand it over to you, Molly, to take it away.
Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. My name is Molly Garcia. I work for Xero Cloud Accounting. I'm the community engagement manager. I've actually been with Xero for 5 years in various roles, but now I'm on the partner engagement team. So what does that mean? I support our communities. I run our Intro to Xero webinars. If anyone wants to get a link to check it out, I'll send it to you after. And I am joined by my fellow panelists, Spencer, Stephen, and Marcus. Spencer, I'll pass it over to you to do a quick intro.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Molly. Hi, I'm Spencer Christek. I'm with Tally4. My title is growth. I basically head up all the customer-facing operations for our company. We're about 4 years old and joined by a couple of our mutual customers here. Kick it over to Stephen.
Cool. Thanks, Spencer. Stephen Byler from Growth Lab Financial Services. For context, I'm not a CPA. I do own an accounting firm. We do use Tally4. We do use Xero. And, we've taken I think, a fairly unique approach to our tax season to try to flatten the curve, and looking forward to talking about it. But it's been a journey, and it will be a continued journey to make sure that you can navigate tax season. And I'll hand it to Marcus.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Hey, guys. Marcus Meir. I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. I own a small, what I would call CPA practice, small business advisory practice here in Lafayette, Louisiana. Heavy user of Xero and Tally4 as well. And it's really kind of helped us streamline our tax engagements, which I'm sure we'll get into. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, the way we've kind of broken this out is we're going to break this webinar into 3 sections. So first, we're going to talk about working with clients, and then working with tech, and then working with your team throughout tax season, because these are all 3 super important parts. So I guess first question, Marcus, I'll start with you. How do you generally plan for tax season?
It's funny because I saw the poll question come up, and I'm like, didn't tax season just end, or we got like the plan for the next one? For us, I mean, we take a different approach in the sense that we're always thinking about, first thing in terms of planning is, who do we want to prepare tax returns for? It's a big question for us and so when we talk about planning, yeah, we do it, but it's going to be for us around the client engagement, how we engage them to give us documents and work with them, but also who we're working for, which I think is maybe more than half the problem with a lot tax accountants is just not working with the right clients that don't allow you to use a lot of this technology in the way you'd like to. So for us, that's the beginning of the planning process is who are we going to engage this year? And then from that, building out what does our client experience look like?
Steven, same question for
Do you want
you.
me to- So, yeah, we typically start planning for the next tax season right around now. And I totally agree, Marcus. It's making sure you are working with people you want to work for, right, and work with. We were not a tax first shop. Dan and I started this 10 years ago, and we were, neither of us were accountants, but we knew we needed good books for our customers. The customers at the time were more CFO customers. And so we acquired a bookkeeping business. We actually launched our tax business right in the middle of COVID. And so it hasn't been core. It is core now to the business, but we have the advantage to some degree of being able to select who we work with and for on the tax side, because we don't rely on it for like necessarily the bread and butter, right? So we focus on business customers, business tax returns, and even within that, you've got ones that are going to be easier, ones that are going to be harder, and you can really select: do I want to take on that work, or do I not want to take on that work? That's kind of step one, and then step two is how do you structure it? How do you engage with the customer? And for us, we all love to pay, don't love to pay for it. We are aware of the need to pay for premium services, right? But when it comes to taxes, we don't usually think of that, right? And so in the last 2 years, we've tried to flatten the tax curve by engaging with customers in a different way. If they want taxes done on time, they're going to pay a premium to get it done on time, because my team's time in those first 4 months of the year are going to be like premium time, right? And if they don't, then we can put them on extension and charge them the regular fee, and we have more time to get the work done. So those are kind of two major factors. There's a lot of others that allow us to kind of plan for and engage with the right people in the right context.
And I think that's a good jump off point. Like Stephen, right? It sounds like a lot of that is about what I've got a note here for is like setting client expectations, right? So like, right. And part of that expectation is like, right, differentiating maybe between like what is a premium service and what is a standard service, right? And understanding the correlation between that service and what you're paying. Like, what are some other examples of how you're kind of setting expectations for your clients, especially at this time of year, is like engagement letters are getting ready and so forth?
I think that's a great example, because any of us can probably say with 80% confidence which customers are just going to go on extension. They may have all intentions of filing on time, and everybody, come turn of the year, they're like, I'm going to file on time this year, right? But we all probably know with pretty good confidence which of those customers that have been with us 2, 3, 5, 10 years, which ones of them are going to go on extension, just because they're complicated, their pass-through entities don't close until the last minute, for whatever reason, right? So it's like half of them just sign up for what they know they need, right? And right there and then you've got your expectations set, right? You just need to file an extension, and then you don't have to think about them until after the first deadline. Otherwise, let's face it, the tax professional is going to have everybody top of mind. Am I going to get them done by the tax deadline? Am I going but if you can get them signed, we start sending out engagement letters November, December timeframe to just, again, kind of set expectations. Like, are you going to be in or out for next tax season? Because I've got a certain amount of capacity, and I want to make sure that I'm allocating that capacity appropriately. So number one is even just getting those customers to realize hey, it's worth saving a little extra bucks, because I know I'm going to go on extension anyways. And then everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows I get that extension filed, and then I don't have to think about it again, right? And the value is there. We've all signed up for that. Is what I want. So that just takes a lot of stress off the table, right off the bat. And then you can focus on those customers that really do have a strategic reason to file on time, that really do have their stuff together to get their books closed, to get their documents together, so that you can do it and you can get their tax return filed and put that premium price into place.
What about you, Marcus?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great, man.
Yeah, in terms of I would say we get a little different approach in the sense that we don't necessarily go the premium route in terms of getting people in line. I've always kind of been leery of everybody then rushing to get in line and oh God, what have we created here? in terms of a surge of workflow. But I've heard it done kind of that way. I've heard it done in other ways. Ours is a little different in the sense that most of our tax work is bundled in with other work. So it's part of our, what I would say, part of our subscription pricing is you've got both your business and the key owners of the business personal tax return and planning kind of built in. So we're working with people throughout the year, which is why we've kind of started to over the years limit the amount of actual tax work we do. I mean, we only do 250 tax returns, I think, give or take. And for a firm of our size, revenue probably would be more in the probably 3 times that. So our approach is just to limit actually the number of tax returns we do, kind of the one-off stuff, which I'm sure Stephen and them are probably similar in the vein that they're doing tax work for people that they do other services for. And that was kind of our strategy, was just to work with the people. There's exceptions to that. We have a few what you would call orphan 1040s, kind of spheres of influence, referral sources. But for us, it's just limiting the people for which we do tax return work, because then we can more easily build processes. We can more easily communicate. There's not people we're scrambling to find. Most of the people are kind of in the fold and we're already talking to. So that was kind of the approach we've taken around how to manage the tax season work and then into extension season.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I think that's it's a great in for especially tax focused firms that want to get more into, some people call it CAS, client advisory services, client accounting services, whatever you might want to call it, right? There's a lot of people that have historically done taxes that want to get more ingrained in that, because you're exactly right, Marcus. Like we only do taxes for customers that are also bookkeeping customers, right? So we touch them at least 12 times a year, right? From the accounting perspective, and the tax team has access to the books, does a quarterly review of their books, whether we're engaged to engage with them quarterly in a meeting, or whether they're just looking at the books and telling the accounting team, hey, here's some things we want to change, because come end of year, here's what I want to be able to run these reports, or look at these numbers a little bit differently. But it's a great avenue for people that want to get more into those client accounting services to add value and decrease the pain during tax season, because you are going to be more in touch with them. You are going to be in communication with them. They are going to call you more frequently with what's going on. I just bought a business. I just bought a house. I just bought a building. I just sold a building, whatever the case may be, right? There's a lot of things that you want to know as a tax provider that, if you know that throughout the year, you're going to be able to plan, do things in advance, so that it's not just this push at the end of the year. So just that plug for people that want to get into this business. It's a great way to do it, add value to the customer and add value to the firm. Yeah, and I would say, just to kind of piggyback off that, adding those services makes your tax season easier. Right. When you kind of, like you mentioned, all those different touch points are just little bits of information that you're then saying, oh, I know they're going to be on extension, or I know I'm waiting on a K1, or I know we've got some planning in the fourth quarter. So just it's funny how it works. As you gain the other services, i.e. CAS, or like you said, whatever it's called these days, the tax services become easier. Because the way we describe our tax engagements is that the tax engagement for us is really the finish to the engagement. And for a lot of people, it's the start, right? And so we've been working together, kind of already knowing what the compliance will look like, and we've planned for it. And so we want to move the compliance piece to the end. Mm-hmm. I like that nomenclature, that approach.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, from the audience, where are you at in the journey? If you don't mind just dropping in the chat or the Q&A. But yeah, thank you guys for sharing that. And I know, Stephen, you had mentioned engagement letters. So do you have any tips around that whole process, or what does your process look like, and what would you set up as a toolkit for the audience?
So we use Ignition for all of our engagement agreements. So that in and of itself has been a huge win for us, because we do the premium and the on time and on extension filing. Those are 2 options. So you send the customer the 2 options, and the customer can choose, right? Another benefit of engaging with them, as we do, as Marcus does throughout the year, you're aware of hey, your tax return last year was super simple, but what you've done over the last 12 months, 8 months, is going to make your tax return a lot more expensive. So I'm going to be able to price that a lot better, a lot more appropriate. I don't know about you, Marcus, but we do fixed price taxes, right? So I'm going to sign up to do your taxes. I'm not asking you to pay me by the hour. I'm saying I'm going to do your taxes for X price, for on time and for extension. So we use Ignition. We send them out around November, December timeframe. Try to get people to sign up before everything gets busy. January timeframe, so that we know who's in and out. There's always going to be the stragglers, but it makes me laugh to some degree. And apologies if people out there do this, but the engagement letter comes with the actual tax return, right? Sign this letter. Here's your taxes. Sign this letter, and this is what the fee is going to be. I want to know that up front, because if you're not willing to engage in our terms, then I'm not going to engage, and I'm not going to be on the hook to do your tax return. The other thing that we've done in our engagement letters is really set those expectations about when are you going to give me information? And if you don't give me information by X, I'm not on the hook to get your tax return done on time. And that feels really crappy. Like, I had lots of internal conversations with our tax team, trying to get that language put in there. But when push comes to shove, if they're sending stuff on, yesterday, I have the option to tell the team, like, yeah, let's push this one through. That's we want to do this for the customer, or be like, we've been pestering them for 2 months and they're just getting into us right now. Like, no, I'm not willing to make your life miserable for that one customer, because my employee is a lot more valuable to me than that customer. Like, and that may sound too harsh, but in the end, like, why we're doing a lot of this is to make the employee experience a better experience, so that I have a longer life with them, because they're going to drive a lot more value to their customers if they are here for 10 years, rather than if they're burnt out in 2 years. Then I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I'll try to zip it.
I would add to that, but I don't know what I would add. I don't know what I would add. I would say one thing I love that you said, which was, I heard this at a conference once, is so great, is that if you want to deliver a great client experience, first deliver a great employee experience, because they're 100%. Going to be the ones to deliver your team. I mean, like me, I'm a technician, I'm involved too, but if your employee experience is great and worthwhile and fulfilling, and refreshing, you can expect your team to deliver that experience. But if you start to encroach on that by letting the wrong people in the door and the wrong people dictate the wrong terms, then you start to erode what you're trying to give, which is great customer service. So that's all I really add to that, is it's 100% accurate.
Yeah, right. Your engagement, or your engagement letter, really is your tool, right, to like codify the client profile, the expectations, the team experience, right? It's like, that's your opportunity. And I definitely see it, to Stephen's point, like, folks don't take that step in the process perhaps seriously enough, right? And they miss the opportunity to kind of like put those rails in place in proper fashion.
Totally.
Yeah, and I would say real quick, your team, the more you stick to it, the more trust you build with your team, in terms of like what they see you're willing to do for the benefit of them, right? You're willing to put that in an engagement letter, but then not only that, stick to it, which I think is really important.
And it's one thing to ask more of your team, right, for a client that's like a total pain in the butt. But if you, right, invariably, like, you set these rules, you set these expectations, and like, stuff happens, right? Like, right. But if it's a client that's also like pulling their weight, right, the team is more likely to want to come through for them in that circumstance and go above and beyond, right? Rather than somebody who, right, their boss is basically just push them around.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. Let's see, where are we time wise? Why don't we move on? Because I think this is a good jump off point. Right, we were talking about the engagement process, right? And that's a lot about, right, setting the client experience, but there's also, kind of a tech framework, right? And I look at it as like, you put those two things together, and that's what's really going to dictate your team's experience. So, let's talk about the tech piece for a while. Right, that's kind of what sits between your clients and your team. What's you mentioned Ignition for engagement letters, like, a real quick walkthrough of like how your tech stack plays out, right, over the course, right? It starts in Ignition, and probably ends up in a piece of tax software. What's that look like for each of you guys?
Do you want to go first, Marcus?
Yeah, I'll take it. For us, similar to Steven, starts with Ignition. At least on the individual side, in terms of like some of the one-off stuff we do. Ignition, and then we're using kind of twofold: Canopy for our project management, document collection and retention. And we also use JotForm for some questionnaires. It all kind of works together. And then on the entity side, which, it's kind of why we're here, we're using Zero. Probably for 90 to 95% of our clients, we use Zero. And then we use Tally4 on the back end for the groupings and pushing the data into UltraTax.
Cool. Yeah, we start with Ignition. That is our engagement platform. Before that, we use HubSpot for our CRM. Comes into Ignition. Ignition gets pushed into Carbon. So we use Carbon for our workflow management software. So anytime a tax engagement gets completed, a piece of work gets automatically created in Carbon. It gets assigned to the right people, the tax team. One little area for improvement between them is the due dates of all those. So those have to get mass updated. But we use Carbon for the back end communication with the customer, document capture. We're big Tally4 users for the past 3 years, and now the team couldn't live without it. We use CCH as the tax software, so it ultimately gets pushed into there. And we have, sorry, Molly, we have a mix of QBO and Zero, but you already know that in our system. But it, very much a hard line of like, you need a good, solid cloud-based general ledger to be able to make our work and your comfort as a business owner a solid experience.
Yep.
So I know you guys are obviously panelists on this webinar because you have a good tax season toolkit of technology, but I'm sure at one point there might have been a tool that you used that you didn't love, or introducing it to the team and it didn't go smoothly. Like, can you guys tell us about that type of experience and how it is to deploy a new technology for you and your team?
I would say our worst experiences, I won't name softwares because it's less about the software, it's more about the implementation method, right? Our worst experiences are when I come back from a conference and be like, hey, we're doing this. And we probably all have been there and made that mistake. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, but just try to like cram it down. The best experiences have been when we say, hey, just try this. I don't care if you like it or not. Just try it. Try it on 2 customers. Try it on 1 customer. Try it on 10 customers. Ask the team to experience it. That's when you get that. Yeah, this is good. This is bad. Or I like this feature. Let's try this other piece of software that's similar, but different experience.
Yeah, I would say similar. For us, it's been the overwhelming wins have been when they've had team involvement, right? Not to Stephen's point, I think everybody's come home from a conference kind of on fire with a list of things they want to do. And I know I have. So yeah, that's been the best thing has been when maybe just in our team meeting, somebody brings up something, somebody vets it out, discusses a few wins, and then we can kind of get the momentum going as a team versus kind of a top-down approach where we're saying, hey, I think we really ought to do this. And, as a leader, maybe you hadn't thought it through that great. I know I've been guilty of that before.
Do you guys generally try to, I know because conference season is in the summer, so do you usually switch technology fall, or does it matter in the calendar year, or when do you look to try out new technology?
I mean, I don't know that we have with taxes, you're kind of doing it year round, and you got work. Like, give you an example, we moved 3 weeks ago, and I remember people saying, well, you're moving like September 23rd. I'm like, there's no great time. Like, just do it. So I would imagine there's better times probably this summer, June, July, kind of like there's a little sweet spot there, kind of November. But for us, it's just been, and we have a small team too. So I think you kind of take that for what it's worth. If you got a team of 50 people, maybe a different deal. You've really got to be strategic about it. But for us, in the summer a little bit, but in the fall, like right now, kind of when things are fresh, for me has always been right after deadlines has been the time when I really want to implement something. When the wound's fresh, when I'm, I've worked a little bit, I'm going, okay, not doing that again. And so that's been generally kind of our sweet spot for implementing new tech.
they got to like jump on that pain point while it's still painful, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, people want to fix it. For us, we stay away from making any changes. So a lot of our business is in the bookkeeping side of things, right? And so half our team is in the bookkeeping business. So anything from middle of December to end of February, that's like don't touch the accounting team, right? And I've made that mistake as well, and I've heard about it. So we try not to do any changes there, including hiring. So I need to hire now for the capacity I'm going to need in February, because when even if they're the best bookkeeper controller in the world, they need to learn our team. They need to learn how we deliver value to customers. And that's its own learning process. And it takes time from our current team to make that happen, right? So we try not to hire in that window either. So we hire now for the capacity we need in February. But in terms of software, I do think the sweet spot would be like summer, kind of following events, conferences. Especially the last few years, we started to send our team members to conferences. So not only are ideas coming back from conferences, but it's our team bringing ideas back from conferences, not the business owners who are not CPAs or not bookkeepers, not accountants, bringing that back to the team. It's their own team members and saying, hey, this is not only a great piece of software, but here's how it can help you and I on a day-to-day basis. And then do the trial period, do the implementation, try to get that done before August, September, so that but it's firmly in place for the next real push on the accounting side.
Yeah, and I know to your point, like what I've seen firsthand from folks that have come back to us and in the midst of making a pretty big transition in their firm and have had a success story. Probably two common themes. I mean, you guys, Stephen, like when you were coming on board with Tally4, did an especially good job of like kind of empowering your team, right? To be part of the process, to like get excited about it, take ownership of it. That I think is like a recipe for universal success. Because not only are you like helping to maximize an investment in technology, but you're giving one of your junior staff a much higher like ownership stake in what you're doing at the firm. And then the other point to Marcus is and I made this comment, like I sell software to people, to tax accountants. Like I haven't heard from many people over the last 3 weeks. I woke up to a full inbox. Right. It's like the pain. Yes. When the pain is fresh like that, it seize upon it. Right. Because you never know when that window is gonna close. Moving forward. And so my question is, and I don't just want to limit this to like a piece of technology. It might be the way that you use tech. It might be the way that you vet it. But what are like some positive changes that you've made, either, maybe a new tool, but maybe just a new way of, kind of working and vetting out tools in the last couple of years, and specifically one that's made an impact on tax season?
So the question is, how are we going about vetting softwares?
Well, just like what's some positive like change that you've made, right? With regard to like how you approach your tech stack for tax season.
I think for us in general, it's been to get the team to accept accessories, like Tally4, right? There was some resistance initially, like I can do this work. I don't need Tally4, right? Oh yeah, totally don't need Tally4, but it's going to make your life you're going to make your life a lot better. I don't need a Zen. I don't need other things on the accounting side, because yes, you can do that work, but it's going to make your life a lot easier. I don't need ChatGPT, but it's going to make your life a lot easier if you learn how to use it, right? So using these, like figuring out how to leverage these tools, and not from the top down, but getting the team to find those wins. And it does take time, right? And part of like as the non-accountant owner for Dan and myself, it is starting to implement at a point in time when it's not urgent that it gets adopted, or it's not going to matter whether it gets adopted for the delivery of value to the customer, and and that employee experience. Because those are the two customers as a business owner. But when they do find that tool that they say, oh, I didn't ever think I needed this, but now I can't live without it. That's the huge win.
Yeah, I think for us, it's, one of the things we did, I think probably a lot of us, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, we kind of went on this app spending spree, and then you ended up with 30 apps. And so for us, one of the things I've done recently is just kind of like, is it a Venn diagram where we show it overlaps? I think we kind of did it and said, like, what apps are we using that do other things? And so for us, we've kind of taken a different approach, and we're saying, okay, does this app do it 85 to 90% as well as the specialty app? Because maybe we can have a little bit of consolidation. So we've kind of approached it that way, because I know my personality, again, back to Steven, I'm literally thinking about coming home from conferences with like all these different socks and t-shirts. And I'm like, I'm going to implement all this stuff and I'm doing this. And then I'm like, but this thing we have over here kind of does that, really, it does it well. Does it do it really well? I don't know. And so our approach has been over the years, just maybe a little bit of consolidation to look at what we're using. And so I guess that's our new perspective, is just like, do we have a tool that does that well, that we know already? And then if it doesn't, then maybe we go shopping for one that does that specialty thing really well. But if we can get by with something that does the job and we already know it, we've got some efficiency there. And just kind of like I was saying, under that premise of just trying to consolidate a little bit. Because for years, I mean, I looked up and we were using 40 apps, and I was like, looking at my SaaS spend, and I'm thinking, okay, let's see. I know this app does, it does document storage too. Let's maybe think about that. So that was kind of a new thing for us over the last, I don't know, 6 months to a year.
I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is just continuous improvement. And, we do culture clubs at Growth Lab, small groups of employees, cross-functional teams. They get together for not specifically business purposes, definitely not customer delivery, but that just cross-pollination of ideas, employees getting to know one another. But one of the things that, as we're rolling out to our culture clubs, is continuous improvement. And we have like our one person here that's in charge of all Growth Lab processes, right? And so she keeps her mind on continuous improvement all day long. But as you can get employees not just to go to conferences or owners go to conferences and find tools and then say, how do we implement this? It's go in and say, what are the problems? What do we need to continuously improve? What is put together a problem statement, put it into a DMAIC process, and say, okay, this is what we need to solve for. How do we solve for that? What's our process look like? What are the pinch points? And okay, so then that's the pinch point. That's the problem. What exists that can help me solve that problem? Whether it's managing better, whether it's a tool, whether it's fill in the blank. But that is something I'm super excited about, because it's not just like finding something and trying to shove it into fix something, but what is the problem? And then saying, how do we fix that problem? How do we as a team fix that problem?
Yeah, it's kind of like all of our jobs nowadays are to like take advantage of all the tools that are available to make us better at our jobs. But at the same time, that comes with that's like fraught with peril, because you can simply get like overwhelmed and frivolous with both time and money.
Yeah, and then you'll find that you have 3 ways to solve the same problem inside the firm, right? And then you've lost control, right? So better to have that, like, roll one thing out across the entire firm.
Yeah. And Steven, I know you brought it up earlier, like vetting the platform to solve the solution. So like when there are so many solutions out there, how do you go about vetting and finding the right one for your firm to solve that problem?
I think ultimately one of the fastest ways is to buy 2 or 3 of them and have the team test them and figure out, rather than spin wheels and say what was the functionality, try to match it up, go through 20 different demos. It's some of our job as owners is to just build those relationships in the industry and know what is out there, so that when I need something, I say, okay, go talk to Spencer. Spencer can tell you everything you need to know about Tally4. You have this problem, and that's our jobs. Getting something implemented, it's like, hey, here's 3 people that we can go to try to solve that. Like, bring them all in, have them test in actual customers, and then the team can decide hey, this one, I like this one better than that one. There's been times when I would have made a completely different decision, and I'm super glad I didn't, because the team would have, they just wouldn't have used it. I would have been paying for it. They wouldn't have been using it, right? So better to have them be the ones that are making those decisions in the, like, when the rubber meets the road, than to have me say, no, I want this solution put into place.
Marcus, would you add anything to that, or
Yeah, in terms of you're
Just-
talking about
yeah, just vetting and like deciding what the right solution is for the problem?
again, this kind of goes back to a little bit of our DNA, which is we're fairly small. And so a lot of tools we implement on clients, we use ourselves. So that's always been kind of the litmus test for us is, does it work for us? I mean, because we also are working more and more with professional service type businesses, which we understand. So we get tools that will work for a professional service business. So we generally try to implement them. We never, like, I'm trying to think of some of the tools we've rolled out, like in terms of like Routable for paying bills. Like we use Routable before we pitched it. We used it for 3 or 4 months. Gusto, we moved, years ago, moved all our payroll at Gusto, and like light bulb went off. Like, oh my God, there's a better way to do payroll. We went back to every client and said, we got to put you on Gusto payroll. So for us, it's always been about beta testing it internally. GACon, we use GACon for some consolidations of some entities that I own. And so like we use these things and they made sense to us. And one thing I was always hesitant was putting a client on a tool, not that I was an expert in or that I couldn't find the resource for, but something that I really had no knowledge of. Was kind of caught the shiny object syndrome and got excited and put them on something, but I didn't really know the tool. And so for us, it's just been using it, beta testing it in-house before we roll it out to clients.
And I know you were just mentioning a few tools that have changed your life or your client's life. Do you guys mind sharing a few of those just for the group?
So Ignition changed our lives like 8 years ago. We were not the first adopters, but they have always been spot on. And this is not an additional webinar, so you can be sure I'm not being paid to say that. But I would say that was a game changer for us, and it allows you as a business owner to focus on growing the business, not on the administrative side of things, because it not only takes care of the engagement agreements, it takes care of payments. That was a huge win. Our core tech stack is the general ledger. It is Ignition. It is HubSpot going up, kind of upstream, and then downstream. It's Carbon for the workflow. It's Xero on the tax side. It's Tally4. It's CCH. There are other pieces of software. We've started to use Zenit. It's been great for the team. Gets them again focused on what, not on details that they can find those things, but on what is the value add they can provide to the customer, not what they can provide to the data.
Yeah, I would echo Stephen. Ignition was a huge deal for us. I feel like we're on the Ignition webinar in conjunction with Tally4, but it was great for us. And then kind of on the back end, like Tally4 has been really, really great for us. It's kind of one of those things where you say, I think Stephen mentioned earlier, like when he brought it to his team, yeah, we could do that. We could post to the tax returns. Like, yeah, you can, but can you do it as fast? And can you replicate it the next year? Which is where we're seeing the gains of Tally4, which is the next year. Like, yeah, there's a little setup, but if you work with SaaS long enough, all the efficiencies are in the setup. Once you get rolling and you realize how well it works the next year, like it's a major improvement over what you're doing. So that's been really good for us. Recently, we switched over to kind of the Microsoft stack and seeing some efficiencies there in how we work with clients and using Teams, and that's been interesting, kind of coming from the being a Google shop. So that's kind of and I think we've got to mention Xero and then UltraTax, and we're just kind of getting into HubSpot, Stephen. So I might need to get some tips there because we're just starting to use that pretty heavily. So nice.
And one of our key phrases over the last 2 years have been flattening the tax curve, and that's been a lot of what the effort, especially around that premium extension, setting those expectations. It's about flattening the curve of the work for our team to make it a better experience, because as we talked about earlier, like we are people businesses, right? Both on the employee side and the customer side. We got to make them both happy, but ultimately I care about my employees, because without happy employees, I don't have happy customers. We brought Tally4 in part because of that, because it does help flatten that tax curve. You can do work in advance. You can do work 1 year that carries over to the next year. So it builds upon itself.
And I think before we kind of wrap with our final section, I think we do need to do a polling question. I totally
Yes.
forgot. So
Yes, we do.
Right.
yeah.
And we do have some questions, just so you know, I think. There's numbers in there. All right, so our next poll. Do you have a process to set expectations with clients regarding price changes?
Oof, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Marcus and Steven, I know you can't actually answer on the poll, but do you want to share your answer for the groups?
Yeah, I
Process
mean,
to set expectations. Go ahead, Marcus.
yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I think one of the best things I learned, it was actually I don't remember if I was on the webinar as a panelist or not, but what is this guy? Shane. He goes Brooklyn Phi. I can't remember his last name, but he had a great tip. He said in his ignition engagements, he has a "we don't do" list, which I think was like, it was overtly not only saying, because I think we all talk about scope creep and what we're going to do, but he clearly articulated what he was not going to do. So I guess my answer to your question is, if you can clearly refer back to a very easy to understand, articulated way of saying, hey, we said we weren't going to do this, this, and this. I think most people are adults and they get that. And you can, if you just can kind of stand firm and say, we all agreed. That's why we send engagement letters out, that we would do this, and we absolutely weren't doing that for that fee. I think you'll have a lot better time, because you have a document. I mean, it's pretty black and white, and you don't want to, I think people are leery of being that way with their clients, kind of that in that legalese mode. But I think people get it. There's you have to set those boundaries. So for us, we incorporated that, and I thought it was great. It's like, if your engagement does not include sales tax, we clearly say it does not include sales tax, and that's been good for us.
Yeah, there's definitely power in saying what you don't do. On the flip side of that, when you don't do that, another way to implement that we've used is it is outside of scope, and I've got a service that covers that, right? Yes, I can help you with sales tax. I'll send you a new engagement for that, right? The tendency is just to value the customer and just do whatever it takes for that customer. And if we looked at like our realization rate, like it just every time we say yes, it goes down, right? If we're not charging extra, it doesn't mean you have to gouge them. It doesn't mean you have to but you're selling yourself short, you're selling your team short if you don't say, yes, I'll provide that value too, and here's what it's going to cost you to do that. Marcus, you sound like you're more like that all inclusive, right? Yeah. Here's the monthly fee for us to do bookkeeping, accounting, business planning. We somewhat similar, but we've done like, hey, here's your fee for bookkeeping, here's your fee for FP&A, financial planning analysis, here's your tax. If you want other things like sales tax or virtual tax manager, this is what it's going to cost. But that has been helpful, because we're not just saying we do tax, right? We do tax, and then if you want this, I can provide this. If you want this, I can provide that as well. Like anything finance and accounting, like I can handle for you. It's just, do you want me to handle that for you, and are you willing to pay me for that? And I want to use Ignition to set that fixed. You don't have to use Ignition for a fixed price, but I want to do fixed price because I want to know upfront, are you willing to pay what I think I'm worth or my team is worth, or are you not? And then, if you say no, then I'm not going to do that, and you can find that elsewhere. And I can continue doing this piece for you, and you can insource that piece.
No.
And they're really kind of like both ways of like arriving at, productized services, right? So it's like, and that's the beauty of productized services, right? Is that they're defined. There's an end to what's included. Okay, well, we got a little bit of time left, and I think it's the most important section, actually, because this is right. You do stuff with your clients, you buy tech, you guys have already said this, right? It's all about really, you take care of your team, they take care of your clients. right? That's how it works in every business. Same thing in software business, right? Is take care of your people and they're going to take care of your clients. So now you're not mind readers, right? So like what types of things does your team ask for, to make tax season smoother? And perhaps even more importantly, is how do you encourage them to ask for stuff?
Yeah,
Marcus.
Yeah, for us, what I've learned over time is that people want clear expectations about what success looks like and feedback. And so, and then how do we obtain that along with getting other new things done or new processes? We kind of roll that. We have a monthly one-on-one with each team member, and it's meant to capture those things. Like, how are we doing? How are we doing as a firm in terms of the work you're getting assigned, the expectations you have, and we give you feedback. But it's also a time in an open forum for them to just say, hey, this is not working, or we could do better at this. So for me, it's always on the communication front, and we have regularly scheduled communication with our team. Again, small team, a little bit easier to do for me, but I think anybody at any level with whatever your hierarchical structure is can implement ongoing one-on-ones with feedback and clear definitions of what success looks like at any staff member's level.
Yeah, I would second that. One of the things that I love Gusto for is the monthly survey that they send to all of your employees if you turn it on. There's a lot that Gusto provides that is built into the platform that you can use, and that gives employees a way to give feedback, anonymous feedback. But they have I think it's 10 different sets of questions that you loop through. So after the first year, 2 years, you're starting to get the repeat set of questions. You can compare your answers over time. But the one they always ask is employee engagement, right? Are you engaged? Or would you recommend working for Growth Lab to a friend? And that gives you a base level of are your people happy, right? But it also gives them an avenue to give feedback. And then we try to be very open about that. Here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you were the uglies, the bad comment, I want to know more about that. Not because I want to because those are the places that we can improve on, right? I love that people are happy. I love that everything's going well, but I want to know the stuff that's not going well so that I can improve it. So that doesn't specifically speak to the tax season or how do you improve, but it's being open, being transparent, trying to get that out of your team and making that a good experience. Because if you listen to them and start implementing outside of tax season, then they're going to come to you with ideas for improvement. And some of those would be things you would have thought about. Some would be things that, especially as a non-tax person, I would not even know to ask certain questions. And that's where the value truly comes.
We know tax season. I feel like tax season goes on forever. So I can't imagine what you guys feel like. How are you incentivizing your team to hit those milestones, to stay motivated, to keep on working those late hours? Are you guys doing anything to go above and beyond?
Now, I think our biggest thing we've done is just really, as best we can, eliminate the workload that pushed us into really big overtime. In the future, we don't work a lot of that. It may be different than other people's practices, but I think if you can get to the point of, which is I think what this webinar is building on, is if you can get to the point of a little more efficiency, a little more parameters around how you work and the prices you set, it all starts to trickle down into a little incremental gains in terms of work, how you work, doing it quicker, what you can charging more because you deliver a better service. And ultimately, the byproduct of that is a place where your team doesn't feel like they need to crunch these deadline hours. We certainly have a little more, workload around deadlines, but it's not like a lot of firms that have these high pressure tax firms, So I think if you can implement those things, you can start to erode at those old traditional ways of this is just how it is around these deadlines, and we got to really ramp up and work crazy hours, because increasingly your staff's going to demand that. For years that was the pendulum is swinging, but for years that's just what it is. And now people have options. And so I think you need to try to get ahead of that in the way you operate your business, such that you don't have to have those, and really keep pushing people and getting them to work overtime.
Yeah, I would second that. I think ultimately, like the biggest incentive is having a good employee experience. We do have share in the upside. If they hit targets, like that's on the financial side, that's great. But it does come back to that experience, and even setting those customer expectations, setting the due dates for customers, like get me your stuff by this date, or else I'm not on the hook to do that, right? Because from the employee standpoint, you're kind of watching out for them, because if they don't get it to us 3 weeks, 2 weeks before the deadline, and they get us 2 days, then I'm telling the employee, come hell or high water, you've got to get that done in 2 days. Versus, hey, that 2 week mark, that 3 week mark just passed. So now it's our option as a company, as a firm, as employees. Do we want to go that extra mile? And more likely than not, they're going to do that for the customers that are good customers. They're going to do that if I say, hey, I really need this done for this customer because it's important. They're gonna go the extra mile, and they're gonna feel good about it, because they're gonna feel like they're doing something that they have the option to, or we have the option to do or not to do for the customer.
Yeah, I think it's different, right? It's working a 60-hour week, like, because it's compulsory, right, is a whole different feeling than like working a 60-hour week because you're like being a hero and coming through for clients that you empathize, admire, want the best for the business, all that type of stuff. But it's like, yeah, you have to make these, like, take these incremental steps to get there, so that, yeah, if your team is making that investment, it's there's something behind it. It's not just a requirement.
100%.
Let's see, how are we doing on time?
I think we should maybe do the final polling question, and then we can wrap, and then
Yeah, let's work
answer
that
any
in.
questions.
Yeah, sure.
Let's
I want
do
to make
it.
sure everyone gets their CPE.
Do you feel prepared for tax season?
After this webinar, yes.
It's a loaded question right there. Well, people answer that. I see there's a question about Zenit. It's actually XENETT. It's a tool to review books, find anomalies, etc.
And then
Well, it looks like 6 say no and 7 say yes. So yay for the 7 who are feeling prepared.
And that reminded me, one piece of tech we're using heavily, if you're going to get into doing bookkeeping and accounting, month-end close, or whatever you want to call it, we use Keeper. And that's been, I can't believe I didn't even think of that. That's been a huge tool for our team in terms of when Stephen mentioned kind of the anomalies and variance analysis, but just capturing and closing and standardized processes around closing. Keeper's been really, really great for us.
And that comes to the question, will the list of mentioned apps be emailed? So I guess you guys will have to send over your list so we can email it to them.
Sure.
What is Tally? I think you mean Tally 4, I'm assuming.
Marcus, you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Tally 4 is a tax, at least how we use it. Spencer, I'm sure, is going to tell you all the new features. A tax grouping software. So think about if you get, like for us, it plugs into Zero, meaning it can pull this data out of Zero, and then you can then group things together. So everybody knows you've got these 10 accounts that you're going to group as office supplies, right? Well, do that one time in Tally 4. Next year, when the data flows in from Zero or QBO, all those 10 expenses are again in office expense. You've got a report saying everything you've grouped together. So from a review perspective, no more number one. Some of the ones is this. I think we've all done that before. Or these weird work papers about how you've put these 2 accounts together, but not these 3. That's all laid out for you. And then you get a nice, easy import into your tax software, and it just works. And like I said, you'll gain the efficiency. You'll gain it in the first year, but the second year you'll be like, I'm so glad that those 10 accounts are grouped together, because I don't it's just the things you do all the time. And I know they're rolling out new products, but for us, that grouping, the ability to make tax journal entries, which is really great. You can, there's certain things that the bookkeeping team doesn't do, but maybe your tax team does. You can print a report showing all the journal entries you made, what kind. So anyway, that's kind of been my experience with it. It's really helped us. Did I miss anything?
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I was just gonna say we're a cloud tax work paper solution.
Yeah, there you go.
So better from your mouth than mine.
We have another question.
Yeah.
Why Zero versus QBO? And I didn't stage this question, I promise.
I can tell you, I mean, I know for us, it just Zero was the cloud platform I moved to when I got off QuickBooks Desktop. So Zero is kind of what opened my eyes, like in the cloud world of like, oh my gosh, we can do this in a web browser and connect to different apps. And so, but what I've learned over time, and if you would ask my team, for us, user experience, functionality, just makes sense enough in terms of features and robustness to do the job, but not overwhelming. But I know, there's this whole, QBO Zero debate. We just like it better. I think it just came out of preference. We like it. We know it. Everybody here is certified. But we've used it from day one of our practice.
And I know for us, we see a couple things like just in how it plays out for people doing taxes. And I'm a Zero alumni myself. But a couple things that I actually used to get beat up a little bit on was like the insistence on account numbers in Zero. And then also what we see is the standardization with like chart of accounts and stuff like that. Those two things, which Zero kind of sort of nudges you in the direction of, we see produce very good results downstream in tax, because those two things have a huge impact on your ability to kind of like streamline the movement of data along the process. And we've seen that actually play itself out with the numbers, how long it takes somebody to actually do something in our product.
Thank you guys. And thank you for whoever asked that question. Okay, I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to give Marcus and Steven closing thoughts on how to make this tax season successful.
Yeah, like for the 6 folks who said they weren't prepared, right? Like what's the one like kernel of encouragement to have them wake up more confident tomorrow?
Well, I think the good news is tax season just ended, right? So
Yeah,
you got time. Time is on your side right now. So embrace it, like we talked about. Like now you know what the pain points are, and embrace it. Jump into it. Don't just say, "Hey, my work is done. I can kind of relax for a few months." Like jump on the bandwagon of what do I need to change? What do I want to change? What I want to change for myself? Is it I don't want to do X. I don't want to do partnerships anymore. I don't want to do 1040s anymore. I don't want to do X anymore. Is it do something for your team? Like I don't want them working 60 hours. How do I solve for that problem? There are ways to solve for those problems, right? If that is a problem, because some people they love it, right? That's how they live. That's how they build their year. Is like I'm going to work my tail off, and then I'm going to relax, and that's good. That's fine. But if do you need to do something bigger? What is the problem you want to solve? Just pick one problem and solve for that for next tax season. Do the same thing next year. Do the same thing next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. One thing I'd add to it is, and I know this is difficult for a lot of people, is think about who you want to work with. It is one of the most impactful things about any planning, any efficiency in your practice is who you let in the door. And them. It's the people who, when you see the call on your phone, you get a little anxiety. Like, I think, I think people need to really, and I do it. I've struggled with it. I think everybody has, but I can tell you, and everybody will tell you that it's what you need to do. And then you do a little bit of it and you experience it and you go, they were right. Like, I think everybody should be looking at who they want to work with, not from a arrogant standpoint, but just from a, hey, this is how I want to run my business intentionally. And these are the kind of people I want to serve. And I think if you can do that in this fourth quarter, it gives them plenty of time in a professional way to find another provider. And you give them everything they need to leave gracefully. I think that's one of the best things you can do is really look who's coming in the door.
Well said. And you got a +1 from someone in the Q&A.
Yes.
That's
We're launching one more poll just to make sure if you need TPE to let us know. We appreciate it. So that makes our lives a little bit easier. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for being on this awesome panel today, talking about tax season and all the tools that you use. obviously tools are so important in our lives and just help make our lives easier. So
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
yes,
everybody.
thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Steven.
Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Marcus. Have a
Bye,
great week,
guys.
everybody.